in very important, promising areas. And of course, there are lots of things to discuss.
And we will be able to discuss them all. Yes, I guess we'll put our weekend on the altar of this discussion. So, thank you very much, Mr. President. As I was flying here, I thought that indeed we made it a good tradition to Orthodox nations, and we've been meeting every year. This church looks almost like home to me. It's been built in 1114. So there's a lot of land in Belarus to build a temple. There's a lot of land here to build a temple as well, because we have the same confession, the Orthodox Christian confession, and thank you for making this a good tradition. So speaking of negotiations in Istanbul, you haven't commented on that, but has there been a response to propositions voiced in Istanbul? And how do you see the progress of the negotiations and their prospects? Just the other day, Zelensky said, maybe today, Zelensky said that he needs to wait for the regime to change before starting any negotiations. Well, they can wait. If the Ukrainian leadership thinks they should wait, well, of course, please be our guests. We're ready to wait. And second, our political regime is based on the constitution of the Russian Federation, and our government works in strict compliance with the fundamental law of the Russian Federation, unlike what we see in Ukraine. I won't go into details, but today's power in Ukraine is not based on Ukraine's constitution. But I won't go into details here. And as for negotiations are always very important, especially if it's a peace negotiation. My overall view of it is positive, and how can one not be positive about something that allows hundreds of people to come back to their homeland? Out of humanitarian considerations, we gave the Ukrainian side thousands of bodies of dead Ukrainian soldiers and received back several dozens of our guys who sacrificed their lives for Russia. And of course, I think this is positive. And as for, well, disappointments on any part, I think all disappointments emerge from excessive expectations. That's the general rule. But to solve this issue in a peaceful way, there must be a solid communication in place, not in public, but quietly. And this is the reason why we suggested creating the three groups that you mentioned. Overall, the Ukrainian side's reaction was positive. We agreed that we can have these negotiations without any political noise, without cameras. These groups have not started their work yet, but in general, I repeat, the first response of the Ukrainian side was positive. So we expect this process to begin soon. The conditions of a long-term peace that you voiced a while ago in Minsk, are they still in place? Yes, they are still the same, of course. The goals of Russia remain the same, but until that, we've been told it's unclear what Russia wants. Well, we formulated those goals last June last year, at a meeting with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The most important is to eliminate the root cause of the conflict. And of course, there are humanitarian issues, security issues in a broad sense. By the way, from the Ukrainian delegation, there was an idea that probably makes sense to be talking about the security of Ukraine and Russia in the context of the general European security. That was said by one of the leaders of Ukraine's delegation. And in general, I think this is correct. We share this position. And humanitarian issues, like the one of the Russian language, independence, and decent conditions for Orthodox Church and Christianity in Ukraine. All this, in general, must be discussed and serve as the foundation for a long-term, unlimited peace. So, President Lukashenko, President Putin, the West keeps issuing and imposing new sanctions. There have been 18 packages so far. Is the Union state going to change its strategy accordingly? I think we have changed everything we need. If someone closes the door in front of us, well, there are lots of open doors in the world still. Both Russia and Belarus have made a very serious turn, and I think the world will appreciate what we have done over the last few years, but still we did it. We will live, and nobody in this world will ever succeed at making us stand on our knees. We are committed to protecting our interests, and Russia indeed is a treasure trove of valuable minerals and technologies. I think it will take time for all people in Russia and Belarus and in the West to see that we are capable of a lot of things. Sanctions, there are no sanctions. No use talking about them. The moment we start talking about sanctions, I think those who don't want to work, they use sanctions as excuse. I think sanctions mean opportunities for us. And I think Russia shares this position, and, well, we've always been there, out there for Russia. We have always been there, we will always be there. Don't worry about sanctions. And as for negotiations and President Putin's position, I absolutely support it. I think he's very right in saying that the negotiations are always in progress. The Americans used to fight in Vietnam very far away from their homeland, and they were in negotiations from day one. I think the Ukrainians make the mistake of demanding the impossible. What they say, it's all decided at the negotiations table. There can be turns and progressions, but I think those categorical demands the Ukrainians make, they are for the public. I think they speak a lot, but they don't want to do much. And the statements of our common friend, Donald Trump, how we rooted for him to win. This is not the way politics is done. If he wants peace, he must be careful in his steps. It's a military conflict, and you can't just go around giving orders to nuclear powers. This is ridiculous. I recently had a meeting with the Americans, some of Trump's close friends, and I told them to tell their presidents to be very careful in his steps. That's the only way to reach an agreement. Russia is looking forward to a peace agreement. So I'm telling Trump to tell Zelensky to stop sending his drones. Recently, in Belarus, there was 59 kilograms of explosives. A drone hit a 10-story house, an apartment block. I think this escalation is very dangerous. We really need to stop it, and we need to be very careful in our actions. And the negotiations in Istanbul currently going on, and they're going to continue in Belarus. We do all these exchanges, cross-border exchanges. We restored railway communication there, cross-border. So a lot of progress is being made. So I'm encouraging everyone to come and visit. There are negotiations in place for human rights commissioners. There's a war going on. There are orphaned children. Russia is basically blamed for caring for orphans. So it turned out there were no children, not so many children as they claimed. When in the course of the negotiations in Istanbul, we asked them to provide lists of names. They didn't provide anything. I think we just need to sit down at a table and reach an agreement. By the way, it all started in Belarus. There were 3 rounds in Minsk. If they don't like it in Belarus, well, feel free to go out anywhere. I don't care if it's on the moon. We need to talk instead of throwing stones at each other. He said he wanted to meet with Putin. Well, prepare the documents, prepare the ideas, and call everyone. Call Trump, call Macron, call Starmer, and sit down at the table. I think they just don't want to start negotiations. You said our countries have a very broad security agenda. Are you going to discuss that as well? And what about the Ornik missile system? Any progress on deploying that in Belarus? Any specific details? Well, the specific details, well, the military are always in a hurry. They wanted to deploy the Oreshniks next year, and President Putin was right. He said that the construction process and development projects will be completed this year. The first thing I wanted to say in this connection, we have already manufactured the first serial production Oreshnik missile complex, and it's already been fielded. It is now serially produced weapon. Number 2, our specialists from Belarus and from Russia have selected the future deployment site, the location, and preparations are underway, so most likely before the end of the year we will solve this. But we are in no rush. We don't have to hurry. The launch site is easy to build. It's not easy, it's not fast, and the launch site must be protected. So everything is going according to plan. Don't worry about our security. The current situation with the special military operation, well, just yesterday I discussed these matters with the Minister of Defense and Head of Joint Chiefs of Staff, and I knew we'd have a Q&A with the press. I asked them myself, so how to answer a question like yours, the current situation of the special military operation? And they asked me to answer honestly. So, how do I answer honestly? Honestly, our troops are advancing along the entire battle line, along the entire front line. In Donetsk Republic and Lugansk and Zaporozhye and Kherson, everywhere they are advancing. Thanks to the valor and bravery of our guys. We are in a special place right now. Place a church in memory of all Russian warriors who died in all times on motherland. And today's positive dynamics on the front line is due to the heroism of our guys. But we must remember the warriors who never came back from battlefields, because they created the conditions for today's fighters to advance, to have this opportunity. I think it's a joint. We need to give credit for them. No life was lost in vain in this regard. Well, just recently, you may have heard they took Chasov Yar. And I can say for sure that this is true. Our troops have claimed Chasov Yar several days ago. But probably there may have been some attempts at counterattacking. And I think it shows that the supreme leadership of Ukraine is poorly informed of the developments on the front line, but that's their problem. In general, the dynamic is positive. Well, our enemies, our ill-wishers, recently talked about the need to deliver strategic defeat to Russia on the battlefield. Now their rhetoric is different. They're hell-bent on stopping our offensive at any costs, either by promises of good life or by threats to rearm Ukraine, to stop our advance and then try to rearm Ukraine. Once again, we need a long-lasting peace on a good foundation that would satisfy both Russia and Ukraine and ensure security. And probably Ukrainian negotiators are right, who very carefully proposed talking about the concept of European security in general. So Moscow has been talking about peace and readiness to settle issues and reaching peace. And but the last deal between the US and the EU have been called a disaster. What do you think? What do you think would be the consequences for the world economy? Well, recently Russia stated that continuation of this policy will lead to deindustrialization of Europe. I think this is already happening. They will destroy Europe and European Union. Well, rumor has it that the Americans have this goal of weakening Europe. This is what is happening, I think. Well, instead of going toe-to-toe with us, instead of fighting us, Europe should have been with Russia. If Europe and Russia ever united, that would be a nightmare for the Americans. A united European Union and Russia would be an immense force. But Well, I have a very poor opinion of European leaders. Some of them have already left as lame ducks. Some of them have less than 20% support. And the key reason, I think, is their position regarding the conflict in Ukraine. They're very poor themselves, but they are pouring trillions of dollars into Ukraine. I think this is not right. Just recently, political scientists and the political establishment used to say that the European Union is an economic giant, but a political dwarf. These are not my words. I don't want to offend anyone. I read that in Western sources, but previously, it's especially important. Sovereignty plays a key role in economic development, among other things. It was clear that the European Union has not much sovereignty, and now it's obvious that they don't have any sovereignty at all. And in the critical situation that we are currently witnessing, they're going to lose their political sovereignty, and after that, they're going to lose their economic sovereignty as well. And the losses will be enormous. I've always said that one of the key goals is strengthening the sovereignty of Russia. That's one of the goals of the special military operation as well. Recently have been scandals in Ukraine connected with anti-corruption authorities there. Mr. Lukashenko, how would you comment on that? Well, I've been thinking about that, but the West is currently pressing Zelensky, and I've been watching this and thinking, what did he want? He took billions and billions of money, and now the West wants to see how this money is spent. And once they came up with this idea of establishing NABU and Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, talk about sovereignty. Those who gave him money now want to see how this money is spent. I think this is a publicity stunt. And in 2 days later, or in just 3 days later, the Ukrainian parliament played it all back, and Zelensky signed the law. It shows that there is no sovereignty. And how can he complain? He took the money, and now his creditors want to see where the money went. And where the money went, you probably know very well. Lots of people have been building magnificent mansions on Côte d'Azur and feel very well there. Well, this is madness. I think corruption is a negative phenomenon in the world that's characteristic of many countries, if not all countries. There's nothing special about it. It's about the degree of corruption, and it's about the society's commitment to fighting it. Readiness to fight corruption. And what do I mean by a society being ready to fight corruption? A society must be willing and ready to fight corruption. That's part of democracy. But you can't bring democracy from outside. Just like you can't fight corruption from outside. Especially if this fighting is done by those deeply affected by corruption themselves. Don't you see corruption in Europe or in the States? It's legal there. There's this phenomenon of lobbyism. There's people walking around giving out money to people in power at all levels of power. That's corruption. It's clear that Ukraine is indeed overwhelmed by corruption. Can it be fought from outside? No. Those bureaus, they don't report to the president. They are an external institution. Well, I just said, how can one bring democracy from outside? When those authorities were established in Ukraine in 2015, now we have 2025, they've been fighting corruption for a decade. So over this decade, they've been screaming Vladimir that Ukraine is being overwhelmed by corruption. Yes, exactly, but the efficiency of institutions enforced from outside is zero. I think instead they should help people stand on their feet and create themselves anti-corruption institutions. It's impossible that people elect their parliament and elect their president and have no say in the politics of their country. That's complete absence of sovereignty. Well, they tried to reclaim at least part of their sovereignty, but then the whip snapped and they got back. I think they only disgraced themselves. But the thought about reclaiming at least part of their sovereignty is the right thought, I think. And the last question, otherwise we'll spend all day here. The process of peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, it's slow. Is Belarus willing to contribute? Yes, we have agreed with President Putin long ago that if need arises, they will invite Belarus to contribute to the negotiations. We're already working together on important issues as POW exchange of bodies. We treat everyone equally. People are people, be they Russians or Ukrainians, they're all soldiers, they're all warriors. Some of them are wounded, some of them are not healthy. We provide medical assistance to them, not only to prisoners of war. We handle dead bodies as well. And we have established railway communication. We have resumed railway communication to deliver dead bodies in refrigerator cars. So we had to bring in railway people with experience of handling that. So Russia and Ukraine asked Belarus to help in this matter. And Vladimir Putin, I think, was very right here in saying, and I absolutely agree, about Chasov Yar. Well, maybe there are some houses on the outskirts of Chasov Yar, maybe, but Chasov Yar opens up the road to Kramatorsk, the center of special military operation for Ukraine. Ukraine, I think, must run to President Putin and ask him to get to the negotiations table. Otherwise, in a month or maybe two, the whole front line will collapse, I think, because the Russian troops are going to advance and move on, reclaiming territories. So, yes, we need to get to the negotiations table. If they want to reach an agreement, they must run for it. They must really hurry. We have absolutely the same information on the current battle developments. There's Russian offensive going on everywhere. Maybe it's slow at times, but it's slow because they are sparing people. They're advancing slowly but steadily, instead of throwing thousands of people against machine guns. 600,000 Soviet people died in Poland in World War II during the offensives. Currently, the offensive is going slowly but steadily. And as for Ukraine's participation in the negotiations process, we're very grateful to President Lukashenko and to Belarus for the support they have been giving us. We are always in touch, and I always inform President Lukashenko about the progress of the negotiations. And in fact, all the exchanges take place in the territory of Belarus. The negotiations process started in Belarus in 2022, before moving to Istanbul. We know the position of Belarus leadership and the entire people of Belarus, who really want to see peace between Russia and Ukraine as soon as possible, and President Lukashenko has been directly contributing to all this. During video footage of earthquake in Kamchatka, there's been footage of medics holding a patient on the surgery table during the earthquake. Are they going to receive awards? Well, duty can be carried out in different ways, and those medics, they carried out their duty in a heroic way, and of course they deserve state awards and decorations. I recently received a report from the governor of Kamchatka. Many years ago, we reinforced buildings and structures in Kamchatka, those in seismic zones. We worked on communication systems there, and I hope this played its role in mitigating the results, because there have been no serious casualties and serious damage to building. As for the doctors you've been mentioning, I should say that we have lots of specialists who fulfill their duty in the most heroic way, and we always do our best to evaluate their efforts, including state decorations as well. Thank you. Despite all hardships that our life is so full of, we're very happy to welcome you here at this very special place, in a very special time.